Not too bad at all. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. Hope you're all doing well. Now, in this video, we're going to make a really simple bird table slash bird house on a stand for the garden with some feeders in it. Now, this is a nice, simple project. I've kind of designed this to be as easy as possible to make. So it's a really basic one, but it turns out really well with a little bit of paint on it. Every single angle on this is 45 degrees, so you can set your miter saw to 45 degrees and cut away. You don't have to worry about any complex angles. I'll take you through the entire build. It's super simple, so if you've never made anything before in your life, you will be able to make one of these. So nice and simple. In an upcoming video, I might do a much more complex version, but for this one, we're going to keep it nice and simple. So let's crack on and build ourselves a bird table. Now, before we continue, I just want to very quickly thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Tradify. Now, Tradify is a complete job management platform designed for self-employed tradespeople. So if you're in the trades and you're on the tools all day and you struggle with your office work, definitely check it out. I'm 15 years working as a self-employed electrician, and I use it, and it has saved me a whole bunch of time, so I don't mind recommending it to you guys. It'll help you with everything from generating professional-looking documents such as invoices and quotations. You can schedule jobs through it. You can even manage a small crew to it. If you have a number of employees, they can input all their timesheets to it, and you can assign different people to different jobs. So it's desktop based and it's also mobile based, so it's iOS and Android, so you can carry your office with you in your pocket. And believe me, it will speed up all that office work. It'll even tie into your accounting software at the end of the year, making that a bit more streamlined as well. And as you guys know, time is money. So definitely check it out. I will leave a link in the description below. There's a 14-day free trial, no strings attached. You can play around with the full job management platform, see how it works for your business. And there's also a promo code MANINSHED that'll give you 50% off for your first 3 months. So remember, if you're on the tools all day and you struggle with your office work, check out Tradify. It'll really help you out. Now, let's get back to the project. Okay, so let's crack on with this project. Now, the whole point of this is to make it as easy as possible so that anybody starting out making something can put one of these together. So we're going to try and keep it to a small few power tools. I will be using my miter saw, but not much else. So if you have a miter saw, you can make this. Now, I'm going to be using 2x2 or 50x50. It's really 45x45. This is some pressure treated timber. You could take some 2x4 or 4x2 and rip this, which would give you two 2x2s as well. That's the cheaper way to get all the material for this. But I'm going to assume that you guys don't have access to a table saw or a large bandsaw for ripping long boards. So I recommend, if you don't, just go to your local hardware store or builders providers and get yourself a bit of 2x2 pressure treated stock. So that's going to make most of our frames. All our cuts for our frame are going to be at 45 degrees, so we can set our miter saw to 45 degrees and cut away. Now, I'm going to get on and make this and show you how it goes together as I'm making it. It's extremely simple, and I'll give you a few dimensions as we're going. We're not going to explain too much. This one's going to go together nice and easy. So let's do it. First thing we want to do is cut the 4 legs. So let's get on and do that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is cut the 4 legs. Now, anytime I'm cutting multiple pieces and I need them to be exactly the same length, I always set up a stop block. That's the best way to do it. Now, the legs we're going to be cutting are going to be 400 millimeters or 20 inches. So I just like to drop my miter saw down, just lock it in place like that, and then I can measure off the blade. Now, we're going to be cutting these at 45 degrees, so we need to bevel this guy over to 45, and we need to measure it that way. I'll show you the quick and easy way to measure off your blade when it's at an angle. Let's do that. Okay, so if the blade was at 0 degrees, I could just measure straight off the blade, put a mark at 500 on my table and set up my stop block right there. But we're at an angle of 45 degrees, so it's not going to be in the same place as if I measure off 0. So what I like to do is just take the stock that you're going to cut, whatever size that is, you can just run the blade up against it. Now there's the point that I'm measuring from, right here where it makes contact with the blade. So I'm just going to measure off that up 500. Which is right here. Put a line right there, and now I can put my stop block right on that line, and I know that I'm going to be exactly 500 from the end of my mitre to the end of my mitre, or the end of my 45 to the end of my 45. So let's get on and cut all these. So before I start making noise here, I'm just going to cut 2 mitres in each of the legs, 2 45-degree cuts either end of the leg. So my first cut is going to be going in this direction. I want my second cut going in the opposite direction. So that just means I have to flip the timber over to put in the second cut, and then my 2 mitres will be going in opposite direction. So let's get on and do that. Okay, so I've cut all our pieces for our stand. There are my 4 legs, all at 500 millimeters, the exact same length. We have a 45-degree cut on both ends. I've also just cut the brace pieces for the legs. These are 300 millimeters or 12 inches. I'll show you how these go together now. And our main stand, or the main pole, stem, whatever you want to call it, upright for our stand. I cut that at 1.3 meters, and that should give me the exact height that I need. So let me very quickly show you how all this goes together. Okay, let me very quickly explain how all this goes together. So here's our upright, our post, here's our 4 legs, and here are our brace pieces. Now, I'm going to cut a half lap joint into both of these, and they are going to go together in a cross formation just like that. They're going to sit inside one another nice and flush, right at the center, and then we're going to screw that on to the end of our post just like that. So if we look at this in a kind of a side view, they will be on just like that, and our leg will go on to the side. So you just slide this guy down until the 45 touches here and touches on the brace piece, and we can screw that in there and in here, and the other leg on the other side will do the exact same. Now, you can just screw the 2 of these guys together just like this. However, if you do that, you're moving the bottom 45-degree away from the post. So just to give you a demonstration of that, if I was to pull that down, it means these 2 legs then would have to sit further down the post in order to make contact with the brace piece. So you would have to cut those 2 legs a little bit longer. So if you're not going to cut a half lap joint and you're just going to screw these together, you will have to allow for the 2 legs that go on the bottom of this to be that bit shorter, because they will have to move down in order to make contact with the 45 here and onto your post. It'll all make sense now in a minute. Let's get our half lap joints cut. Okay, so I have my half laps marked out. I'm going to take out exactly the width of one of these pieces, halfway down in the exact center on both sides. Now, I have to make sure that I do the top of one and the bottom of the other, so that it's going to sit together like this. Don't make the mistake of taking the top out of 2 pieces, otherwise they end up going together like this and the angles will be wrong. So always mark your waist and just pay attention to what you're doing. And another good tip as well, when you're doing joints like this, where you're joining 2 pieces together, use the actual thickness of the piece of timber to mark out your joint. So I just put a center mark on this. I got a center mark on this piece, lined the both of those up, and that gives me the exact width of the piece that I need to take out. So using kind of relative measurement, and then you can't really go wrong. And I know that that guy has to sit exactly in there. Now, I'm going to be using the trenching feature on my Mitre saw to do this. You could use a handsaw, cut down there and chisel this out. There's loads of ways of removing this stock. I'm going to use the trenching function on a Mitre saw. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to do some trenching cuts with my Mitre saw. So my Mitre saw has a depth stop, so the blade can now no longer go any further than that. I have it set to exactly half the thickness of this piece. Now, there's a couple of things just to be aware of when you're doing trenching cuts on a Mitre saw. One thing is that the blade is obviously circular, and the lowest point of the blade is here. So when that's all the way in, the lowest point is here. It's a good bit out from my fence. So if I was to put this piece up against the fence, the lowest point would only reach maybe a quarter of the way into this timber, and it would not give me the correct depth all the way across the timber. So you have to use a piece to go against your fence to keep this out, so that you're getting the full depth of cut all the way through the piece. So that's one thing to remember, and if you do that, you have to make sure you have a piece with 2 perfectly parallel edges, so that everything stays perfectly square. Another thing is that there's a little bit of flex in the mechanism of a Mitre saw. So even though I have the depth stop set, I can still push that a few millimeters past because there's a flex in the mechanism. So the harder you push, the less accurate you're going to be. So just let the saw come down, sit on the depth stop and just push it in. Don't force it down. Don't really try and push this down because it will give you loads of inconsistencies. So that being said, let's get on and cut this. Okay, so our half laps are done, nice and simple on the Mitre saw, just a little bit of trenching. So they just click together just like that, nice and simple. So that's the brace for our legs. Now, I've just put an X here, I've marked the exact center, I've drilled a pilot hole straight through, I've marked the exact center of the base of our upright or post, I've just drilled a little pilot hole in that as well, and we're just going to screw the two of these together. So I'll put this together with a little bit of wood glue, and then we'll drive a screw through the whole lot and screw on our base or our brace pieces for our legs onto our post. Let's do that. Just a little bit of glue in this, I don't need too much. Just to glue that together. Nice big screw then through the whole lot, up through there, just like that. Drive that home. That's happy days. So there is the base now of our post and upright with the leg braces on. So now we can start attaching the legs. Now to attach the legs, it is nice and simple. So I just want to rest my leg on my brace piece. So I get that sitting nicely on the 45 just like that. And then this 45 recut should fit nicely against our post. And those two are sitting quite nicely like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the top of this with a line like this. I'm going to square that all the way around just to be 100% that when I put on my other legs that they are all going up to the same line, and that we can iron out any little discrepancies that we have. Just make sure all the feet are sitting on the floor at the exact same level. So to attach this, it's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be a screw through here and a screw in there. Nice and simple. We'll drill a pilot hole again so that we don't risk splitting the timber. So I'll get on and do that. It's just a bunch of screws. So it's just a screw in here and screw in here and screw on the other three legs, and hey presto, there we go. So I'll do that, and when that's all done, we'll jump back in. Okay guys, so there's the stand for our board table now, all done, good and solid. It's a nice classic kind of board table design, nice and easy, those half lap joints, bracing the legs and everything just cut at 45 degrees, just to one angle, and that's all we have to do. Now, it's standing at about 1.5 meters, so the legs are 500 millimeters, the brace piece is 300 millimeters, and our upright post is 1.3 meters, 1300 mil, and that puts the whole thing standing then at 1.5. So now, it's just a case of put our table on this and build a little house. Let's do that. Okay, so we're on to making the birdhouse top for our board table. Now, I've just been and cut a piece of 1/2 inch plywood. This is 400 by 400 squares. That's roughly 16 inches by 16 inches. That will sit on top of our post just like that. And then I cut another bunch of 45s, just like our legs and our brace pieces, only these ones are 200 millimeters or 8 inches. And they will fit on just like that. One on each side, so we'll have 4 of those in total, exactly the same way as we put the legs on, and they will help to support our top. So there'll be 4 brace pieces holding our top on just like that. Now, let me show you how the birdhouse is going to go together. Okay, so for the assembly of the birdhouse, it's going to be nice and simple again. I'm using whatever I have to hand in the workshop. This doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It's just a nice, simple woodworking project. So again, we have our 400 by 400 base for our table. Then I've cut some 2x1 lats, and they are just going to go around the outside just like that. Just like a mitre frame around the outside. That will just give us a little lip all the way around so that the bird seed doesn't fall off the table. Then I've cut some more of the 2x2 This is cut to 250 millimeters. And again, it's just 45s, and they're going to sit and be our 4 posts for our roof, just like that. So again, very, very simple. Now, I've run out of 2x2, so I split the 2x4. Like I said at the start of the video, you could do this. I've just run it through the bandsaw. Again, make sure you have enough 2x2 when you're doing this project. And they are just going to sit, again, everything is just 45s, and they will sit just like that and be a roof support. So that's essentially how the frame is going together. We'll brace with a couple of pieces around in a square as well, and a piece across the top, and then we put 2 more pieces of plywood on top of that, and it'll be happy days. So let's start to get some of this assembled now, and we'll build as we go. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is put my 2x1 lat mitred frame around my tabletop. So it's just going to sit on it just like that. I'm going to use some staples in around the side with a bit of glue to hold this all together. So it's going to be pretty easy. So we'll do 2 sides at a time. So it's going to run a bead of glue just along the plywood. We don't need too much. We'll be stapling it as well. And down this side, just like that. That's it there. And then we're just going to put some glue on our mitres. Just like that. Lovely. And just continue on like that. Okay, so that's our tabletop assembled. We have our mitred frame from 2x1 lat around the plywood. Again, it's just a case of keeping all the birdseed from falling off. Now, on the back, I've just joined the corners to get the center point right here. I've drilled a hole and I've put a countersink bit in it right here. So I'm going to drive a screw through that, down through the center of our upright or our post to get this on, and then we'll attach the brace pieces. Let's do that. Okay, so I've just put a screw straight down through the center hole, straight down through the center of our post. I just have my laser level set up. It's just quite handy for aligning things. So I've marked the center of my table, which is right here. You can see the laser is hitting it, and it's hitting right in the center of my post. So that way I know my top now is not twisted left or right, and that it's perfectly aligned with the post, so everything is nice and square. I use laser levels a lot in my woodworking. I find them fantastic for just doing things like this. It takes seconds to line projects up. They are quite handy. So that's good. Now we can get the brace pieces on underneath. Let's do that. Okay, now all our brace pieces for our top are in. It's just a case of 4 pilot holes and screw the top or our table to the brace pieces. Just a couple of pilot holes and a couple of screws. Okay, next thing is going on is the 4 posts for the house. So again, I've just drilled a pilot hole there. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on this, set them down and screw these from the bottom. So a little bit of glue on the bottom and on the sides. Set them in there just like that. We can screw that in place. Lovely. Okay, so it's going to be much easier to build the rest of this if I take it off its stand. It's a little bit high up to work on, so it's going to be easier to put it back on the table. So I just marked here and here, so I know that it goes back on this way around and all the screw holes will line back up. So pop the 5 screws, take this back off, and we can build the rest of the house on the table. Okay guys, we have the roof trusses in place. Now here's another nice little use of the laser. So no measurements required to put these guys on. There's just a 45-degree cut and a 45-degree cut. Again, everything on the miter saw has 45 degrees and 45 degrees only. So I've measured the center of the table here and here, lined the laser up with that. And then once the center of the laser, or the laser hit the center of my apex, front and back, I knew that these were perfectly aligned. So I just drove a screw straight down through the posts on either side, and it's happy days indeed. Now, there's only a brace piece to go in the middle, and it's just a case of turn this guy up on edge. Just turn it 45 degrees so that it lines up with the roof. Screw here, and that's the roof done. Okay guys, it's time to put on the roof. Again, nice and simple. It's just a couple of pieces of plywood. Remember, we're keeping this one nice and simple and basic. We might do a fancier designed birdhouse in another video where there's lots of joinery and even roof slates and all the got good stuff. But this is the basic model. So it's nice and simple. All we're going to do is cut these square. You don't have to do any 45s or anything for the roof. So you're going to stop this one right at the apex, and this side you're going to cut a little bit longer. So it's going to be longer by the width of the board, and that one is just going to come up, if I can catch it in my hand, just like that, and it's going to sit over this one. So you can see they now meet perfectly. So this board comes over this board and sits perfectly flush with it along here. So that means you don't have to do any 45-degree cuts in here or long rips. It makes it nice and simple. So it's a case of glue this now, a few staples in it, staple this, and it's almost ready for final assembly. A little bit of sanding, and then we'll get the finish on it. Okay guys, it's a couple of days later. I'm back at this project. Now I want to get it all painted up and help preserve this. Now I haven't glued it together or screwed it together yet, so the top is still not fixed on. It's just going to make it easier to paint, and I also want to pay particular attention to the end parts of my pressure treated timber. Obviously pressure treatment doesn't go all the way through the wood, so when you cut it, you're exposing wood that's not pressure treated, and we want to pay particular attention to the feet. Make sure we get some preserver on that, because they would be in contact with the ground, and that's the first place it's going to rot. So this is definitely something that's going to have to be painted every year, or maybe twice a year, in order to help keep it, especially the plywood, because none of that is pressure treated. And now I'm just going to be using some of this. It's Ronseal decking stain. I really like the color of this. I use it in my planter video build where I built in the built-in seep in the two planters, and I really like the color of it, so this is what I'm going to use. So I'll crack on, get this all painted up, and we'll jump back in, and it's almost finished. Alright guys, there we go, all painted up. The project is just about finished, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So it's made essentially from scraps that I have around my workshop, and we have ourselves a nice little bird feeder table slash house that looks pretty good. I really like that stain. It's a lovely colour. I really like it on the planters, and I really like it on this now as well. So a super simple bird table to build. Now I've just added a couple of screws here and there for hanging bird feeders off. So again, you can hang whatever you like on this. You can just use it and put some bird seed in the center of it here, or you can hang feeders and stuff for smaller birds and squirrels. I've just put a little hook inside in it as well for a bird feeder. It's kind of, you just fill it up, and it's one of those self-feeding kind of ones. The nuts just keep falling down as the birds eat it, and that one is great for smaller birds. So yeah, there you go. Turned out pretty well indeed. Okay guys, so there we go, another project complete, and hopefully you've enjoyed that one, and hopefully you've got something from it. Again, I kind of designed this so that it would be super easy to make, and if you've never made anything before in your life, you would be able to make this. You can make them as complex and as extravagant as you like, but this is just a really basic, simple design. A little bit of plywood, a little bit of 2x2, a couple of 45-degree cuts, and you are good to go. A little bit of glue, a little bit of screw, and that's all you need. Now, like I say, you can add tiles to the roof, you can add felt to the roof, there's loads of stuff you can do. I might make a more complex one of these with loads of joinery and even a slate roof. If that's something you guys would like to see, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure and get that in an upcoming project. But for now, this is going to go out in the garden. My daughter really wants one of these, so now she has one. It's winter time is coming, so it always gets harder for little robins and stuff to find food in the winter, so it's always nice to have a bird feeder out in your garden for the winter months, and that's exactly what this is going to do. So if you like it guys, give it a thumbs up. Comments and questions below as always. I try to get back to everybody. Let me know what you think of it, or what you would do differently. I'm always interested to hear your take on things as well. And thanks as always to everybody over on Patreon who continue to support the channel. Much appreciated guys. So that's it. Links to everything as always below in the description. I'm going to get out of here now, and we're going to get some bird seed, fill these up and get out in the garden, and I'll leave that little bit to my daughter. So there we go guys. Until the next one, take it easy.